A lot of people have asked me, how have you come to the decision to homeschool? And so here's the story, and I will try to keep it, brief and to the point. But there are several steps because I didn't know anything about homeschooling. And so there's a whole story of how I first found out about it and how I struggle with it. And long story short, I did not want to homeschool, but God had other plans. And if you talk to public school teachers, they talk about a calling, right? Because it's a thankless job to be somebody else's teacher, so, somebody else's child's teacher, right? And so let's start with the beginning. I grew up in a different country, not the United States. I grew up in Romania, and I had never heard of homeschooling until I came to the United States to study on a college scholarship in Virginia. And they told me that some of the kids that I had met on campus, my age, 18, 19-year-olds, had been homeschooled, and I had no idea what that was. So somebody said, "Oh yeah, they've never been to school." What do you mean? Well, their parents taught them at home. I laughed. Okay. You know, Sarah's laughter in the Old Testament, if you're familiar with the Old Testament, Abraham's wife, Sarah, she laughed when she heard the idea that she was going to have a baby in her old age. I laughed in the same way, like, are you kidding me? What do you mean parents teaching their kids at home? It was so foreign to me. I was fresh off the boat, as they say, and I knew things were done differently in the United States, but that just sounded preposterous. And of course, I got to spend time with these kids who had been homeschooled, right? Graduates of a high school at home. And they were amazing. They were amazing. They played at least one instrument. Some of them knew how to make their own clothes. Some of them could change the oil and the tires on a car. Some of them, all of them, boys and girls, could prepare meals, and not just any meals, healthy meals and a menu. Not to mention, they presented themselves well, they were respectful, they were super kind, they were head and shoulders about everybody else. And it was almost like you could tell if this kid was exceptional, he must have been homeschooled. It was amazing. So I experienced the product first, the product of homeschooling. And this was the 90s. I was in the United States in the 90s. These kids had been homeschooled through the 80s. And if you know anything about the history of homeschooling in the United States, that was the time when it was still illegal in many, many states to homeschool. And for instance, some of my friends who lived in Massachusetts, that's the state where they were inspected at home, okay, by the school board representative. And they would watch the mom teach a lesson at the board. I mean, it was crazy, the things they had to do back then. And you have these kids who grow up in this hostile environment, and everybody calls them weirdos, and they have no co-ops and they have no textbooks, right? They're doing all the unit studies and things, and it's just, they thrive and they end up being amazing individuals. That was number one. Number two, I read Better Late Than Early by Dr. Raymond Moore and his wife, Dorothy Moore. I was publishing major, but my minor was in education. So my instructor put that book on my list of reading because he said, you need to understand the concept of being ready to study. And Dr. Moore specialized in this whole idea of you got to wait for the child to be ready. And if you're going to err on the side of early or late, it's better to start late. Hence the title, Better Late Than Early. At the time, at the time when he did this, when he prepared this whole research, the state of California was getting ready to institute mandatory preschool for 4-year-olds. Okay, universal preschool. But it wasn't for 4-year-olds. It was for 3-year-olds that would turn 4 during the school year, kind of like kindergarten, but 2 years early. And he went into research and proved to these educators and legislators that it's not good for the kids. He talked about the eyes and the development of the hand-eye coordination and emotional issues and social issues and so on and so forth. The book was amazing, and I think everybody should be reading this book. So I read that book for my personal studies in college. And then lo and behold, I graduate, I go and work in Sweden at a private school. And Dr. Moore is one of our visiting instructors. So I met him. He came there with his daughter. By then he was in his 80s. She was in her 50s. So they were, trying to help him travel with help. But he was sharp as sharp can be. And I worked with him. He watched me in action. But he didn't tell me he wanted me to work for him. He waited until I left, because like a year later, I went and I got another job. This was in Ullared, Sweden, and I was there for 2 years. And then I got a job in Stockholm, which is on the other side of Sweden. And Ullared is next to Göteborg. They pronounce it in Swedish, or Gothenburg. So that's on the west coast of Sweden. So now I moved to the east coast in Stockholm, and I got a job there. And I get a phone call one night. It was like 10 p.m. My roommate came and she said, Dr. Moore is on the phone. I'm like, who? How does he even have your number? I was renting a room with from a friend who had been in Sweden for many, many years. And apparently he called the place where I used to work, asked if I was still there. I wasn't. They gave him my number because I had left them my number. And he called me up and offered me a job to work for the Moore Foundation in Washougal, Washington. And he said, I didn't want to poach you from these people. I knew they needed you. I saw you in action. I need you at my foundation. And I started crying because I was done with nonprofits. Long story short, he hired an immigration lawyer. I went to the American Embassy in Stockholm on September the 13th, 2001. That's a whole story. 2 days after 9/11. I was on the Swedish Boulevard where ABBA and Bjorn Borg and those people live, where all the embassy row is, right? Canadian Embassy, American Embassy. And it was blocked. Sacks of sand and barrier. The CIA guy there checking my passport, making sure that I have an appointment with the embassy, the guy with the machine gun. I mean, it was crazy. September the 13th, 2001. I got a visa to come to the United States and work with Dr. Moore. The visa was an R1, Religious Worker 1, which is the visa they give to pastors or religious professionals. So people who work in nonprofits, in religious organizations, in the office, And so I came, I worked with him and for him, and it didn't quite work out. Let's just gloss over it. He was 86 and I was 26. Some things just don't work. I ended up in Tennessee. I worked for another nonprofit. That was a great experience. While I was there, I met my husband, who is a Tennessee man, and we got married and had children. And all of a sudden, I was a different person. The chemistry of becoming a mother changed me. And all of a sudden, this career-oriented woman who laughed at the idea of homeschooling wanted to be at home with her children during their preschool years. And I counsel with so many people, and I have a friend who used to work as a licensed family therapist, and she said, Adriana, the first 5 years of your children's lives on the floor with blocks, you will never regret it. And I was kind of hooked on them anyway. I loved my children. I liked my children. I couldn't be away from my children, which was something surprising. I never knew that that was a thing, that mothers cannot stop staring at their own babies. But that was my situation. And so I just kind of started doing activities with them at home, and I had so much fun. And then I started thinking, okay, this is getting serious. We got to get ready for kindergarten. My son was 3, my daughter was 1. I was reading profusely to them. I kept them away from screens, and I took them to the library for the preschool time. And then this whole idea of homeschooling kept coming back to me, and I kept refusing it. I was like, no, 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 no. Not after what happened in Washougal, Washington. Not after, what. No, I need my own career. I need to make money. And I really don't. So I had all kinds of talks with my husband, and he was like, you don't have to work. You can just take them in premarital counseling, we discussed. We are going to put our children at Pi Beta Phi Elementary in Gatlinburg, where we live, because my husband is a graduate of Pi Beta Phi. And between the two schools that are the closest, there's another school on the other side of us, 10 minutes, and this one is 10, 15 minutes on the other side of us. We live in Sevier County, where the superintendent has done an amazing thing. You don't have to take your kid to a specific school based on the street that you live in. Because we have all these tourism destinations, tourist destinations. And there's all this tourist activity. People live on this street, but they work an hour away, or they work 30 minutes away. And so the superintendent said, listen, just take your child wherever it's convenient. If you travel 30 minutes to get to work by 8 o'clock, they just made it very convenient. So we could have chosen one of these two schools. We chose Pi Beta Phi because that's where my husband graduated from. And so he looked at me and he said, you don't have to work. You can just take the kids to school, relax all day, do something so you can be with them in the evening. We can all have our family time in the evening. Well, the thought wouldn't leave my mind. For 2 years, I studied, I read blogs, I borrowed books from the library. I actually walked to the library and I said, do you happen to have a section on homeschooling? And then I kind of expected our librarian to go, what are you talking about? Try to talk me out of it. Because as we all know, unfortunately, librarians, like college professors and like a lot of teachers, can be very liberal and very anti-homeschooling. And if you're concerned with liberal and you're from outside the United States, liberal means left-leaning. And left-leaning people like government to take care of them, and all the kids are in a school that you don't have to pay for, and everybody gets universal health care, and so on and so forth. So I was expecting the librarian to go, what did you just say? Homeschooling is a bad word. And instead, she goes, sure we do. Let me take you to the shelf. A whole shelf of homeschool books, how to do it. I couldn't believe it. I found titles that I had seen online, bloggers that had mentioned these books, and the actual authors had bloggers, and here's their book in my hand. I couldn't believe it. So for 2 years, I studied. I got myself ready. It was like a master's degree in teaching without the $35,000 diploma attached to it. So we get to the point where we have to decide if we're going to go to public school or not. And my husband said, no, absolutely not. Came back a few hours later and said, you know what? I changed my mind. You want to do this? I trust you. We're going to take it one year at a time, 1 year at a time. If I see anything wrong with their social skills, or if they're getting behind in school, we're going to put them in school. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? They are just a little behind. Are you telling me the kids in public school are not behind when they go to school every day? I trust you. Okay. So I started homeschooling. I also started a blog, homeschoolways.com. The year was 2013. And we've had a lot of fun. my son is a senior now. My daughter's a sophomore. And he just got accepted into all his colleges. He applied to 6 colleges. They all accepted him. He got an SAT score that is placing him in the 99th percentile in the nation. And we're happy. We made the right choice. Was it easy? No, not every time. Is everything easy in your life? Is everything simple? No. You got to do it. You got to take it one step at a time, one day at a time. There will be bad days. There will be good days. And guess what? Everybody wants to quit homeschooling in October and in February. And I will teach you through this podcast, through this video podcast, the series. I will teach you what I did, what worked for us, how to do it. Homeschool Ways means there are ways to homeschool. There are many ways. There's your way, there's my way. Sometimes it works for both of us. Sometimes it doesn't. That's the beauty of homeschooling. I'll see you in the next video.